Hey up, it's that old Yorkshire geek here, and I'm doing a review now of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 1. So if you hear a buzzing, I've got a fly buzzing around my room, and it keeps dive bombing me. Apologies. Right, so anyway, Strange New Worlds, right, we'll crack on. I've watched it twice, and oddly enough, given my reviews of Picard, despite my best feelings, I actually like Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I've enjoyed it. There's things about it that rankle me and annoy me, and we'll get to that. But let's just crack on with it. I've got no notes, so I'm actually just playing the episode in the background, obviously you can't hear it, and I'll give you my thoughts as we go. So there'll probably be a lot of editing which you won't know about because I'll just skip about all over the place. We start off with like an intro logo of the Enterprise flying about, and then it zooms in and it says Star Trek. It's like a Star Trek, what they call it, cinematic universe sort of introduction, which kind of solidifies my notion that what Kurtzman and co are trying to do is re-engineer the original series. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to push the William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy original series to one side, remake it in thine own image, and I think that's what they're going to do, because in season 2 we're going to get Captain Kirk, so we're told, James T. Kirk. We see his brother in this, spoilers, at the end. We see Sam Kirk at the end of this episode. Lieutenant Samuel Kirk. If you watch the original series, you'll know that, Sam Kirk comes a cropper in the episode Operation Annihilate, where he gets killed by these alien, I don't know what they are, they're just like pancakes that fly about and kill people. But anyway, I think that's Sam Kirk. It is, isn't it? Yeah. George Kirk's his father, isn't it? And Sam Kirk's his brother. Yes, it was Samuel Kirk. Anyway, back to the episode. Right, so it starts off, we see some alarms going off and lights flashing, and there's like military officers aplenty. They're going to it's obviously a secure room, and there's this room with screens, and what's happened, they're not humans, they're on another planet, and they've detected a starship in orbit, and they see it on the screens, and it comes into focus, and you think, oh, is there going to be the Enterprise? But actually it isn't. It turns out it's the USS Archer, which is a Hermes-class starship. It's just got one warp nacelle, and later on we'll find out it's got a crew of 3. I don't know how you can crew a starship with 3 people. I mean, you can crew a shuttle or a small ship with 3, but not a bloody starship. The saucer section and everything. That was the first thing that kind of annoyed me. But anyway, so that happens. Then it cuts to Montana, and we see like a lodge, and it says Stardate 1739.12, which is a bit odd because later on in the episode, find out the star date is 2259, because they're using like the Kelvin way of doing star dates. It's basically the year and then a point, whatever. It's not very accurate. The star date system was supposedly designed to be super accurate, but it's not. It's just the year in it now. So it's 2259, but there it said 17 whatever. So I think they made a mistake there. Anyway, so we see Christopher Pike, played by the amazingly charismatic and handsome and, everything, Anson Mount. It makes me bloody sick as a man, because he's everything I'm not. But he's really good. Anyway, he's looking a little bit dishevelled. He's got a big beard. He's making breakfast for Captain, I forgot her name, but is obviously in a relationship with another starship captain, who looks very young. But there you go. So obviously she's staying with him for a while. She's having breakfast in a uniform, but I think she's ready to go back to duty. And she suggests that he should be ready to go back to duty, but he says the Enterprise, is in space dock. It's going to be there for another week. So I think whatever. But he's reluctant to go back to duty because of what happened in Star Trek Discovery Season 2, when he sees his future and he knows he's going to get badly injured by delta radiation, and he experienced all that, the pain and everything. So it's kind of become a disability for him, really. But anyway, his communicator keeps chirping, and she says something which I don't think they'd say in the 23rd century. She says, the phone's ringing. Are you going to get that? I don't think she'd said the phone's ringing. She'd say, are you going to answer your communicator? That's what she'd say. Because I think phones, they've moved on from phones, hadn't they? And then, so I don't think they'd still call them that. They won't call them a telephone or a phone. They should just call it a communicator, won't she? But that's by the by. That's my first nitpick. Anyway, so she buggers off. She's going back to duty. She's going to be back in a month, and she says she hopes he's not there when she gets back, as in she hopes he's returned to duty, doing his captaining stuff. Anyway, his communicator keeps chirping. Obviously he's not answering it. So the next time we see him, is riding his horse through a field of wind turbines. Why they've got wind turbines in the 23rd century, I have no idea. Yes, it's all renewable energy and all that, cool. But in the 23rd century, they've got matter-antimatter reactors, which can create basically unlimited energy. I mean, a starship could pretty much power all of Earth, probably, to create a warp field. And they don't have to be used just to create a warp field, which is another niggle for later. Anyway, he's riding his horse through the snow. Maybe it's Tango, I don't know. Anyway, a shuttle comes swooping down and scares his horse. And it lands, and it actually looks quite nice as the shuttle. It's thankfully it's not a Discovery shuttle. It's one that looks a bit more like the original series. Obviously, it's not exactly the same. It's redesigned, but it's reminiscent of a original series shuttle. And out steps Admiral Robert April, who, as I've said in another video, he's been race changed. It's played by Adrian Holmes, and it's fair enough. He's okay, he's good, but why did they change the character? We'd seen him in the animated series as a white man, and people say, the animated series is not canon. Yes, it is. It is canon. It was made canon in 2006 officially. So anyway, but that's by the by. He tells Pike that number one, who's Lieutenant Commander Una Chin Riley, she's disappeared. She'd gone off on the first contact mission in the USS Archer, and they'd not heard from her for a while. And he wants Pike to take the Enterprise out, even though it's not ready, to go and see what's happened. So, and he says, it's an order basically. And he asks what's up with Chris, and Chris says, it's classified. The captain that they were having a relationship also asked him what were up, and he says, it's classified because remember, they're not allowed to talk about the Discovery, what happened on Discovery, or anything that they did there, because that were classified, super top secret. They're not allowed to talk about the Discovery, the crew, the spore drive, or anything, or Spock's sister. But because they've sodded off to the 32nd century. Anyway, then we get the opening titles, which is all, it's all nice. And I'm torn on the Enterprise. It shows the Enterprise, and I'm torn on the redesign. Yes, it's a nice design. I like it. It's reminiscent. It's like an evolution from the NX-01. It's got that feel to it. I find the hull plating is too dark, though. It's dark grey, and the Enterprise from the original series, and even the motion picture after the refit, is a lighter colour. It's more white or light grey. But it's too dark. Is this for me? But it's still a nice design. As I said, it's reminiscent of the NX-01. And I was talking to me mate about it as we watched this the other night, and I said I'd like to see at the end, because obviously the Enterprise is now, she's in for a refit at the moment. She's having a bit of a refit before Pike takes her out again. And I'd like to see at the end of the series, when it comes to a conclusion, the Enterprise again going for a refit, and we see the pylons for the warp nacelles, the struts, get replaced for the more straighter ones, and make the ship look a bit more like it did in the original series. But 100% they won't do that, because, as I've said before, I think they're re-engineering the original series so that they can forget about, the Shatner Nimoy original series. That's just my theory. Anyway, by the way, this is directed by Akiva Goldsman, which is kind of annoying, because I actually like it, but I don't want to. Every bone in my Star Trek body is saying, hate this. And actually, this next scene that happens, I do hate. It makes me sick to my core. We go to Vulcan, the city of Raal, which I've never heard of. And we see Spock and T'Pring, his betrothed. And they're having dinner, and they're having a very nice conversation, very upbeat. Well, not upbeat, but not jolly because they're Vulcans, but they're having a light-hearted conversation. And then she proposes to him. She says, "Spock, will you marry me?" And I thought, oh, for Christ's sake. And obviously, if you know the original series and the episode of Mock Time, we know that they were betrothed in childhood when Spock was 7 years old, and I presume T'Pring was a little bit younger. They were betrothed. They had kind of a mind meld where the minds, became joined, sort of. And this would bring Spock back to her when he was ready. When he went through a pon fire, I don't know if it was his first pon fire, I don't think so, but when he went through a certain pon fire, it would draw him back to her, and they would become married properly, become husband and wife. And so he didn't see her until then, from the age of 7 until now. He didn't see her, not until now, until the episode of Mock Time. But here now they're showing us now that they're having a proper relationship. They're kissing, and they're basically about to go back, and they're going to do the dirty. And she's asked him to marry her, but they were already betrothed. So this gets on my nerves. She knows Pike. She calls him Chris. Pike, gets in touch with Spock, saying they're going back out, and she calls him Chris. So she's obviously familiar with Pike. I don't know why they've got it, to be honest. Why have they got this scene? I don't understand it. Hey, she's very nice. Whoever's playing T'Pring, I can't remember her name. But she's super attractive, and I don't blame Spock for, wanting to stay on Vulcan with her. So would I. But anyway. And although the dialogue is very formal between them, and they're very, it's very unemotional dialogue, but you can see that their faces, there's emotion on their faces as they're talking, and that's putting me off a little bit. There's little smirks and stuff like that. And I know we saw Spock, Leonard Nimoy, and doing little, twitches with his face, to convey slight emotions. But these are more profound to me. But anyway, whatever. That's the second nitpick that I've got. I don't like this scene. It's probably the only scene in the episode that I actually do not like. They could have done without it. It could have already been on the Enterprise, and you'd have thought it would have already been on the Enterprise, given that he's the science officer. But he'd have been there helping with the refit. But anyway, he's not. He's on Vulcan, shacking up with T'Pring, even though they shouldn't really know each other yet, physically. Anyway, so then what happens? Right, so next thing we see Pike on a shuttlecraft. He's heading up to the Enterprise. He's reading has got a pad or whatever, and he's reading the file on Lieutenant La'an Noonien Singh. She's been assigned as his first officer until they find number 1. Anyway, we get some nice starship porn. He's overflying the Enterprise, and it is cool, I must admit. It does look really good. It's reminiscent of the motion picture. We see a couple of other starships in reflections as well, in space dock, which is kind of nice. If you look closely, just blink and you'll miss it. There's some other ships knocking about as well. Anyway, it beams onto I don't know why he's beamed onto the Enterprise from from the shuttle or from wherever the shuttle docked. Why didn't the shuttle dock with the Enterprise or go into the Enterprise's shuttle bay? I don't know. He beamed onto the Enterprise, whatever. Then he has a little chat with Spock, and Spock meets him, and so obviously Spock got there quicker from Vulcan than Pike did from Earth, and the ship's in Earth orbit. So there you go. I mean, Vulcan's 3 days away at maximum warp, in that time. So it's taken Pike 3 days to get from Montana to the Enterprise. Unbelievable. Then what? Oh yeah, Spock mentions his sister. He says he misses his sister. Not his sister, his adopted sister. And then Pike says, yeah, he misses her too. Mikey Spock. Michael Burnham, the centre of the universe. Anyway, they're going to the bridge. The massive bridge of the Enterprise with its massive... And you can't see view screen because it's a window now. They've carried on the tradition of the Kelvin verse, having a bridge window and not a view screen. The only window on the Starship bridge should be the one that's above them, looking up into space. But no, they've got a bridge window. Nitpick number, whatever, I don't know what I'm on, 3. So we meet Uhura, Cadet Uhura, played by Celia Rose Gooding. I keep wanting to say Celia Gooding Jr., I know, I'm sorry, but... Anyway, she's there, she's all very jolly and stuff. We meet the helmsman, Lieutenant Ortegas, who I'm not sure I like. She's a bit smirky and a bit snarky. But we meet La'an Noonien Singh, and she's all right. She's a bit stiff, but she's fine. There she is. She's fine. She's actually, I've got to admit, La'an Noonien Singh is actually my favourite character on in the series so far, apart from Pike, obviously. But I do like her character. She's quite good. She's a good actress. So there you go. So I'm a bit of a simp for La'an Noonien Singh, despite my reservations about the name and her family. But anyway. So anyway, the Enterprise goes to warp, and it's still they're not using the proper warp effects from the Berman era or the original series era. They're using the rubbish ones, which looks a lot like hyperspace in Star Wars. And then we get to see engineering. I'm not sure about engineering either. It looks a bit it's it's kind of a cool design, but it doesn't look very much like the original series engine room. In fact, the whole ship looks very like the Enterprise from the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. It looks very, Apple Store, very white inside, and shiny, and lens flares. So there's a lot of that. But, I suppose it's to be expected. But that bridge is massive. I can't get over it. It's huge. So I presume when it gets a refit before Kirk takes over, that it's going to get a new bridge module with a much smaller bridge. Then we see, I keep calling him Kirk, it's not Kirk, it's Pike, isn't it? We see Pike in his quarters, and he's remembering his vision of the future. Remember, he went to Boreth, the Klingon, like a religious Klingon planet. They've got a temple and stuff, and he saw his future, didn't he? Because they got time crystals there, and he saw his future, and he saw him getting burnt by delta radiation. In his massive quarters, every room on this Enterprise is massive. It always starts from the establishing shot of this huge room with people in the distance sitting around a table talking. The original series Enterprise rooms, were tiny. I mean, remember Scotty in The Next Generation? Even an admiral would not get a room this size. That's my bad Scottish accent. I do apologise. Anyway, so we see Pike's quarters, and he's got an open fire, like a fireplace in his quarters. Not a great idea aboard a starship. I'd have thought it'd have been a hologram, because when Pike leaves the room, it should say like computer fire off and it'd disappear. But I don't know. Maybe it's a real fire, but you wouldn't think that'd be a good idea, would you? But whatever. I think Pike then talks to Spock about his misgivings about him not being able to... He's having doubts with himself because of, he knows his future, and he's frightened he's going to be second-guessing himself. And Spock basically says, well, he's just got to be himself. And Pike says, who's that? And he says, the captain. And I'd have said, the captain of a starship, because there's something about that word. That phrase, which they used in the original series a lot, didn't they? They used to say, this starship captain or this starship commander. or he's the captain of a starship. There's something about that phrase that just gives me the tingles. I don't know why, it just does. Anyway, so after Spock's pep talk, they finally arrive at this planet, Kylie. I forgot what it's called. Is it Kylie 279? Whatever. I don't know what they called it that for. Obviously, it's a Starfleet designation. I presume them that live there will call it something else, won't they? But maybe they do. I don't know. But so they get there and they see the Archer in orbit above. Oh, by the way, yeah, Pike. I keep calling him Kirk. Pike keeps seeing. Whenever he looks in a reflective surface, he keeps seeing his burnt face from after his accident, and they do that a little bit too much in this episode, I've got to admit. But I'm sure he'll get over it. Anyway, they arrive at Kylie 279, and they see the Archer in orbit, and there's no crew on board, and they do a ship's manifest, and there's only 3 crew. Why is there only 3 crew? I don't know, and none of them are on board. Spock scans the surface. They want to know, what. They get attacked. That's it. First, I think the ship gets fired on by a plasma torpedo or something, a plasma missile or something like that. Obviously, it doesn't really damage them. Pike says, that's 21st century, equivalent to their 21st century technology. What are they doing with developing warp drive? Anyway, Spock does his scan and he says, they haven't developed a warp drive, they've developed a warp bomb. And I'm like, that makes sense. Because remember, the warp drive really is the nacelles. That's what creates the warp field, but it's powered by a matter-antimatter reactor. That powers, basically the warp drive. So I think basically what he's saying is they've developed a matter-antimatter reactor, or a matter-antimatter weapon. So what happens then? So Pike decides they're going to beam down and try and find number 1 and the 2 people that's with an astrophysicist and somebody else. Why is there no crew on the Archer? I don't know. Obviously the Archer is named after Jonathan Archer, the captain of the NX-01. Who would later become an admiral and lose his pet beagle to Scotty in a transporter experiment. But the less about that, the better. But that would in another universe, if you think of it like that. Right, so they decide to go down to the planet, but they've got to make themselves look like the inhabitants, and rather, obviously. Spock, Pike, and La'an, I'll just call La'an, I won't call Noonie and Sing. La'an are going to beam down, so they've got to make them look like the inhabitants. And gone are the days when Spock would just beam down with a woolly hat on covering his ears. Now they've got to undergo genetic therapy. So Dr. Mabenga is the chief medical officer on the Enterprise at the moment. Obviously gets a demotion, doesn't he? When Kirk comes around, because it's Dr. McCoy, isn't it? But Mabenga's still on board, so I wonder how he felt about that, I don't know. And his nurse is Christine Chappell, who looks nothing like Magil Barrett, but whatever. She's still got a white uniform on, reminiscent of the Discovery, medical staff. Mabenga's got blue. So maybe they're still transitioning from the Discovery uniforms. I don't know. I'm just making up excuses. So that she's going to do this genetic therapy. It's basically just an injection, because they always are, aren't they? And she says it'll hurt a lot, so they'll have to sedate them first. So she'll give them a sedative and then inject them with the stuff, and so it won't hurt to physically change them to look like the inhabitants of Kylie 279. Why they couldn't just do prosthetics? They've done prosthetics in the past, haven't they? So why they couldn't do that this time, don't know. Well, for plot reasons, because we had to later on we have to get the therapy to wear off on Spock. Right, so she does this. By the way, she's a bit sassy, is Nurse Chapel, but I'm not sure I like her character, to be honest. Anyway, so she goes through so to speak. She gives them the sedative and then the gene therapy. And I think the sedative makes the gene therapy work a little bit more slowly, so it doesn't hurt. So you don't see it working on them straight away. She does Pike, and then she does Spock, and she says, with you being different, with you being half human and half Vulcan, it might not last as long. So she does him, and then she goes up to Laan, and Laan says she doesn't want a sedative. She just give her the therapy. She don't want to be sedated. I don't know why it doesn't go into that really. But anyway, so the Nurse Chapel says, here you go, sister, or whatever. She calls her sister. Oh, for God's sake, they didn't bloody high five each other or something. So she gives her straight away the therapy, and it works instantly, and she's stunning and brave and doesn't scream or out like that. Spock screams when it wears off later, but Lahan's stunning and brave. But besides that, I actually like it. So the beamed. Oh, I know. Then they go to the transporter room. And remember in the old days, in the original series, and I think maybe in Next Generation they did it as well. Whenever they beamed down to a place where they'd wear local clothing, they would find, they'll go to the ship's stores or in the case of Next Generation, replicate clothing that would be appropriate. But now we find out that the transporter can change your clothing mid-transport, which I suppose is handy, but we've never seen it before. And this is set before the original series, but I don't know. And the transporter chief is Lieutenant Kyle. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same Kyle that we see in the original series and that we see in Star Trek 2, and his Commander Kyle, who was a British person. Obviously this one isn't. And he looks kind of Asian as well, so, but whatever. So they beam down, and they're in traditional Kylie 279 clothing. Spock is shocked to find he's wearing shorts, but they get over it. Laan actually looks kind of hot as a Kylie 279 person, but there you go. So that she uses a tricorder, and she finds out where the warp signature's coming from. So they head in that direction, and they find that I think she gets a reading on number 1 as well. And deep underground, she says. So they've got to find a way in. So they come across a couple of, like, I don't know if the technicians or medical technicians. They're wearing white clothing anyway. So Laan feigns injury and uses it that so Spock can do a Vulcan neck pinch on them, and they beam them up to the Enterprise so that they can copy their IDs and stuff and make it so that somehow she knows that they use retinal scans and can change their retinas to so that they can get through security basically. So they do that. They get their clothing. I think they use the transporter again to get their clothing. Meanwhile, Spock feels that his therapy, his genome therapy, is wearing off. So, that's another problem. Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise, they've got these two Kylie 279ians. I don't know what they're supposed to call them, I don't know. And they've got them sedated, and they're wanting to use the DNA from them to boost Spock's therapy. Anyway, one of them wakes up, so they quickly sedate him again. But while they're doing that, the other one runs away. Just legs it out into the corridor. So Chapel goes running after him. A bit too happy about it, to be honest. It's a bit overly quirky. But anyway, she's running down the corridor. While they just get a security team to, stun him. They don't, but they just chase him about. Anyway, he gets into a turbo lift, and Uhura's there, and she talks to him. She basically calms him down, and they get out of the turbo lift. Oh yeah, apparently, and this Enterprise's sick bay has got an emergency medical transporter. I'm sure McCoy got rid of that when he came on board because he didn't like transporters, does he? But this one's got an emergency medical transporter, and Chapel uses that to beam to the bridge. When they come out of the bridge, when the alien chap, the Kylian, comes out, she sedates him, and that's all sorted. Pike and La'an and Spock get to the security checkpoint, and Pike's works, the scan is retina, that works, gets a green light, goes through. La'an's works, she gets a green light, but Spock's won't work, he keeps getting a red light, and the security guard, says, "Step away, sir." So Kyle has got to work out how to beam a little vial, into Spock's eye to make it pass the retinal scan thing. And it works. I mean, he says, that's not how transporters work, but he makes it work. It's, cool, but whatever, that's another nitpick. I've had a couple of nitpicks, the Enterprise's medical, sick bay's medical transport, that's a nitpick. Whatever. Anyway, so it works. So they get through security, and they have to go down into the depths. They're in an elevator, and this young, it looks a bit like Angelina Jolie. She's eyeing up Pike, but then Spock, who's stood in front of him, his ear starts changing back to a Vulcan ear, and then it changes back to a round one. But then it changes. She notices this, but then they get to their floor, and Pike bundles them out, and Spock says he's in a lot of pain because his gene therapy is wearing off. Anyway, they find the room that number one and the other two people are in. It just shows them the opening the door. I don't know, was it not locked, or could La'an override security? I presume she did. So anyway, they find him, and they're slightly injured. One of them's being shot, and then another, I think, Una's got sprained ankle or something. She can't walk properly. She's hobbling a bit. Then we find out that her and La'an know each other, and she calls her Chief. And I don't know why she calls her Chief, because Pike said when they met later on, he finds that she was an ensign, not a chief, but whatever. Apparently Una saved La'an from the Gorn. Her family were killed by Gorn when she was a kid, and the Gorn kind of threw her back, put her in a raft and launched it into space. One survivor out of their whole colony ship. It's their tradition to just let one survive and throw it into space, and it was number one that picked up her raft. Anyway, so what do they do? They're heading out with the prisoners, and they come across some other technicians and some guards, and then Spock starts screaming because he's in agony, and then he's changed back, his therapy's worn off, he looks Vulcan, so they have a big fight. Obviously, the Starfleet personnel easily overpower the technicians and the security guards, and so there's no time to hide them, so they get in the lift, and they head back to the surface. And then Pike asks number one how they developed warp technology, but number one is reluctant to speak about it because none of the others are cleared apart from Spock and Pike. So they've not got clearance, and so he says, the hell with clearance or whatever. So apparently, when they're not that far away from where the Discovery had that big battle at the end of season 2 with Control, and they opened a portal to the future. Remember, there were all those ships flying about in that big space battle, and Enterprise's 10 million shuttles and fighters and stuff. But I don't know how they fitted all them in. But there was that big battle, and apparently that wasn't far from Kylie 279, and it was seen. They could see it in the telescopes. They could see this battle raging, and somehow, just by watching it through the telescopes, or maybe getting maybe they had some sort of scanners, I don't know, but they worked out how to make a warp engine from seeing this. It's like seeing a UFO and then working out, just by looking at the UFO, how it flies and building its engine. I don't know how they manage that, but that's another nitpick, but whatever. I said whatever a lot, don't I, with these stats. I did it in Picard as well. It's just my way of saying, like, we've got to accept it because it is what it is. That's that's what it is, isn't it? Whatever. But anyway, so Pike decides to send the others back. Just him and Spock, who now looks like Spock, are going to stay behind and basically allow themselves to be captured. And he's going to talk to them because he doesn't want them to experience what Earth went through, with the Third World War and stuff. He don't want to see them setting off, warp bombs. Just say antimatter bombs. He don't want to see them setting them off and destroying, their world. So they take him and he meets this leader, who's also super attractive. She's a mature woman, but she's very attractive. I think it's something about this alien makeup. By the way, the alien makeup is really good. It's very reminiscent of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager alien makeup. Michael Westmore. It's very reminiscent of that style of makeup, and less like what we saw in Discovery and the JJ Treks, like over the top makeup. This is very good. It's very good. I like it. Anyway, so Pike, she's kind of she's reticent to give up their warp bomb and all that, and she's not really listening to what he's got to say. So Pike just barks out an order to the communicator. The communicators have been confiscated, but they're there on the desk, and he says, like, emergency communication. Obviously, you don't have to flip it open for an emergency one. Kirk to Enterprise, brings us into low orbit, show us what you've got. I don't know what they mean by that, but I thought what were going to happen, because we'd seen at the beginning, I forgot to mention this, we'd seen at the beginning he were watching The Day the Earth Stood Still, when they were in his cabin, and I thought what they were going to do was going to use the Enterprise to shut all the power down all over the planet to show what a starship could do, but they don't do that. Instead of just the Enterprise's presence there in the sky. They see it, it's visible to the naked eye. It's obviously in super low orbit, practically in the atmosphere probably. I mean, it doesn't look to be very high up at all when you'll see in the picture. It's actually in the clouds. The clouds got clouds above it, so it's just hanging there, which I'm not entirely sure the Enterprise could do, but whatever. Again, that word. So that basically brings the two warring parties. By the way, the planet's it's at war, or it's got like a seditious element that they've been at war with for centuries. Anyway, that brings them together. But the negotiations aren't really going. They're still arguing, but at least they're talking. They're not fighting for the moment. So Pike decides that he's going to beam down and basically give a presentation of his own. So he beams down in the middle of these negotiations, and he talks about Earth, and he shows Earth. I think he's basically showing, well, not knowing. I might be doing, yeah. He's basically showing the January 6th stuff, and some other clips in as well, that he calls the Second Civil War, and then he talks about the eugenics wars which happened after, so they've changed that. That supposedly happened in the 1990s, but now it's the mid-21st century. And then the Third World War, which he says a third of the population was killed in the Third World War, which goes against what Riker said in First Contact. He said 600 million dead. That's not a third, is it? A third of the population. By the mid-21st century, the Earth's population would probably be around about 8 billion or something like that, wouldn't it? So it'd be a third of that would be like, I don't know, call it 3, just under 3 billion people had died, wouldn't they? But anyway, so whatever. So he says that, he talks to him. He says they're very, this people on this planet are similar to humans, and he doesn't want to see them, going the same way that Earth did. He says, go ahead, go to war, destroy yourselves, or join our federation and reach for the stars. And I must admit, I got a little bit teary-eyed and a little bit lip-quivery. And just thinking about it, I'm getting that way now, because I love Star Trek. And It's the best scene in the episode. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional now. It's on this Star Trek. Anyway. So that works, and everything is super duper. The planet comes round, and the Enterprise sods off. And they go to, I presume it's Jupiter Station. It shows it orbiting Jupiter, so I presume this is Jupiter Station. It's got forests under domes and all that, which is reminiscent of Silent Running. It's another great film. So they're talking to Robert April, Admiral April, and apparently he's been given clearance about the Discovery, event. So he knows about that now. He's been told about that. Pike's ready to go back out of the Enterprise, and La'an had only been temporarily assigned to the Enterprise, but Pike wants her there permanently now, so he talks to her and gets her to come on board. So then they go out, and then we find that on the bridge of the Enterprise, they've a new crew member who actually knows Captain Pike is Lieutenant Kirk. He comes onto the bridge. When he said Lieutenant Kirk's on the way to the bridge, and I'm like, ooh. But it turns out it's Samuel Kirk, Jim's brother. So obviously this is obviously set before him and his family go to, is it Denver, or I can't remember now, the episode, Operation Annihilate, where he meets a sticky end. Anyway, the episode kind of ends there. They go out, the Pike says they're going out there to explore. He does the speech, they're going out there to, find new civilizations and boldly go where no one has gone before. And we get his first glimpse of the Enar officer that beams on board, who were an offshoot of the Andorians that we saw in Enterprise. In the episode, the Enar. And then that's it, the episode ends. The Enterprise warps away, and you know what? I really enjoyed it. I've got to admit I did. Had some niggles and nitpicks, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to say they didn't like it. But, despite my best efforts to not like it, I did. I really enjoyed it. Oh yeah, these forests. Yeah, speaking of... sorry, I'm still watching the episode as I'm talking. I didn't understand that. It talked about these forests in these massive domes, and they said in the 21st century, before World War III happened, or as it was just about to happen, Earth scientists sent seed pods into space, but then after the war, the Earth rebuilt. He said the forests were too large to bring back down, so they built this, Jupiter Station around these forests. And I thought, how did that happen? How can seed pods turn into forests? I don't know. That's another niggle. But anyway, as I said, I really enjoyed the episode. Anson Mount is amazing. It makes me sick. Why isn't he a massive movie star? I don't know. Number one, she's just there. She doesn't really do a lot, to be honest, in this episode. I didn't mind Spock. I didn't like him in Discovery. But he's not too bad in this, apart from him screaming. That was a bit annoying. And I didn't like the scene with T'Pring. But apart from that, he's fine. And I don't mind... Oh, sorry, here comes Sam Kirk. He walks out, and sorry, when I watched it with my mate, I said, it's Guy Fleegman as security chief Rock Ingersoll, because he does look a bit like that. So me and my mate were saying, has he got a last name? Do I? Sorry, I'm giggling now. It is. He does look very much like him. Anyway, where were I? Uhura's fine. She's fair. She's fine. She's fair enough. She doesn't look anything like Nichelle Nichols. Dr. Mabenga's okay. His accent's a bit thick, to be honest. But never mind. Who else is there? And my favourite character is La'an Noonien Singh. I think she's great. I do. She actually reminds me a little bit of the character... Oh, God, don't ask me. The security chief who's super strong in The Orville. She's a little bit like that. In character, not how she looks and stuff. But apart from that, yeah. It's great. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Apart from my little nitpicks, the Enterprise is too dark looking. The hull plating. And other little things. But apart from that, I really enjoyed it, and it kind of did make me cry. You heard me. Kind of did make me get a bit teary-eyed. But apart from that, I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to more adventures in strange new worlds. So I'm probably going to be a voice in the wilderness for a while. Maybe this first episode is the best, and the rest will be crap. You know, a bit like Picard season 2, episode 1 were quite good, wasn't it? And then it went downhill after that. So maybe this will do the same. I hope not, because I enjoyed this first episode. So until next week, when we'll see what adventures the Enterprise crew get up to, wherever you are in the world, or the galaxy, or the universe beyond, look after each other, and I'll see thee.